Okay.
Like my purpose is to eat bananas every day. And where did you get that? Well, I just
Made it up.
Yeah. So you need to ask yourself, if you have a concept of a deity or a God, which is the universe, and you think the universe brought you into existence and must have a reason to bring you into existence. So you can't just assume the reason of my existence to find out what the existence is, my purpose is. No, that's you speculating. So has the universe told you specifically, or anyone else for that matter?
My idea of the purpose of why I'm here.
No, not my idea, not your idea.
Yes, I'm telling you my idea.
No, not your idea. I'm not interested in your idea.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the universe's reason. What is the reason the universe created you? So to know that, we have to go to where? This brother? Well, if I say he's the source to find out why the universe created you, does he have a communication with the creator or this universe?
No.
Right. So he can be excluded. We have to go to the universe. So have you got a direct communication from the universe telling you, Imo, I created you for that purpose?
Not directly, but I still pray every day. So I try to communicate.
No, this is you reaching out.
Yeah.
Right? Look, you can look at this beautiful woman and say, oh, I love her and so on, but she doesn't even know you. It doesn't work. Does the creator that you think exists told you why it has created you? Is the question. So have you had a communication from the creator?
A direct communication?
Yeah.
No.
Right,
But
so how do you then know for sure and have that conviction with certainty that this is the reason the universe created you?
Because I'm here and I'm talking and I exist.
Okay, my
purpose
purpose in life is to eat chocolates every day.
And you can do that.
No, is that the reason the creator created me?
If you believe it, then
No, it's not about a belief. It's about the reality, facts. So if the creator created me for eating chocolates, and actually it's the purpose for every human being to eat chocolates, and you're not doing that, then you're actually disobeying the creator.
yeah,
Right.
From your perspective.
No. If that was in reality, the purpose of human creation. So it's essential for us to know for sure then why we are created. So it's not any benefit for us to speculate. Oh, Mansur says, the reason we are created is to eat chocolates. Well, I'm sure many people will disagree. So how did you know that? This is what the creator said. That's why exactly we ask you, how do you convince yourself with some evidence at hand that the creator indeed created you for whatever purpose that was?
The fact that there's good and bad in the world.
Don't go into speculation. Your speculation is,
How can I give you a definitive
let
answer?
me tell you what it is. To have answer to this question, why are we created by a creator? I can speculate. Like I came up with a very silly idea that we are created to eat chocolates, right? People can come up with millions and zillions of ideas like that. Speculation. What we are interested in, a foolproof way of knowing directly from the creator what the purpose is. So in the absence of that, whatever you say, oh, there's good and bad, there's this, these are all speculations. And people, not us, Tom, Dick and Harry's, philosophers who people think they're very clever, they have come up with lots of different ideas themselves and they don't agree. Okay? So Indian Sanatani philosophers might think baking your own feces and eating it a form of worship and having this communion with God. You might say that's disgusting. So to make sure that we don't fall into this error of human speculations when it comes to the reality of things, we really have to be critical in our approach. Yep.
Logical and
Critical. So critical thinking means then, if you're going to hold on to this idea why you created, do you have that communication from the creator directly? And you said no. That means you cannot be sure what your purpose is. Yeah, that's your opinion.
Can you be sure what your purpose is? And
Yes.
if so, can you demonstrate it?
Yeah. We can only be sure by knowing what the creator has told us. So our purpose in life, we don't just say this is what it is. We have communication directly from the creator.
But you
And
say
based
every
on
single religion.
wait. Based on that, this is the claim we make. This next question is, how do you establish that that was the direct communication from the creator? In principle, it's agreed. Yep, it makes sense If the Creator told you directly, then that would be the purpose of your life. So this is something that we have to agree on, first of all. And if you ask me that, I would say, yeah, of course, the Creator has communicated to us directly. And as Muslims, we will tell you, the Creator gave His communication, His words, His speech, His guidance to a human agent. We call a prophet or a messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His name is Muhammad, okay? 1400 years ago. And he received that message from God, and he's given it to us, and we can actually examine this message today. How do we then, by looking at this message itself, establish that indeed this is from Creator, from our God? And the one who gave us, how do we establish he's indeed the recipient of that message, not an imposter, not a fake individual claimed to be, oh, I receive revelation, I receive inspiration, I receive truth from God. So it's two things, right? One is to ascertain and be confident of the prophet and the messenger, that he is indeed a prophet and messenger of this Creator. And second is, whatever he's brought, is that truly, evidently, the message from God. Do you agree so far? This is the process we should take? Good. So let's start with the prophet. How was he before he claimed to be a prophet? Because if we find an individual, excuse me, no, just leave that. Okay, never mind. If we find an individual who has known in his community to be a deceptive individual, a fraud, a liar, a dishonest individual, his community testified to that, and whatever then he says later, you will be questioning his motive. This man is known to be a fraudster. How am I going to believe in him? What basis do I have? What reasonable basis, logical basis do I have to trust him? You really have to go and, turn everything upside down and say, okay, let me give him a benefit of doubt and let's see whether he's truthful now, he's changed his mind. Do you see the problem here? Because you really have to go and understand deeply whether he's repented and so on and so forth, but still there will be a question. He could be making another lie, another fraud. Yep. That's how we should start assessing it. But when you examine Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what you will find is totally opposite. For the 40 years of his life, his community testified about him that he is a truthful individual, a reliable person. As-Sadiq al-Amin. This was a title given to him. A truthful, reliable, trustworthy individual.
Can I ask you a question then? So if the Prophet Muhammad was so trustful and everyone believed in what he was saying, why was there conflict during and after he died?
Sure. Conflict of what nature?
So there were people that rebelled against what he was teaching.
Yeah.
The Arabs at the time that believed in polytheism, they were all against it. His own uncle was against it.
Correct. So let me explain. So in principle, at least he stands out as a candidate for our scrutiny and assessing him whether indeed he could be potentially a recipient of the revelation, because he's truthful. That's what the claim is. And then you have these other objections. We'll come to that. So let's establish, his truthfulness by giving an example. So when he received revelation from God, he demonstrated that, in terms of exposing the hypocrisy of his people as well, because he knows his people how it's like. He's been living with them for 40 years. So he went into one of the mountains and he called them. Just like in the earlier times when there was no, mobile phones or emergency alarms and things like this, people had different mechanisms. Like they would go to a church bell, ding, 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 and then, you have to all gather together, right? Arabs had a similar kind of emergency call, emergency protocol. So if somebody goes on the top of the mountain and says, Ya Sabaha, something of this nature, they will say something important that we need to all go.
How Jesus was preaching to Jews at the time.
Possibly. So they all left their work, their study, their attendance, whatever it might be. They came to this place. An imminent danger perhaps. That's why someone is calling them. This is the routine protocol. So he said to them, if I told you that there's an army behind the mountain waiting to attack you, would you believe? Guess what they said?
What did they say?
Have a guess. He said, here it was again. He said, if I told you there's an army waiting to attack you behind the mountain, would you believe me? What do you think they would have replied?
If they believed what he was saying about preaching and everything, they would believe him. They'll say yes.
They would say yes based on what?
Based on
their previous experience of him, that he never lied. Yep. And they indeed said that, we would believe you because we've never known you to lie. And then when he said, I come to tell you that God has made me a prophet, I'm paraphrasing these narratives, he's made me a prophet to tell you and inform you that there is no deity or gods worthy of worship, not these idols that you worship, but there's only one and only God that we should all worship, abandoning all these false gods. That's where some of them people turned aside. Because what's going to happen now? Because they realize their whole livelihood, their whole economy, their whole business is based on this polytheistic belief system of making idols in Mecca. People will come for Hajj and different occasions, bring in money. Yeah? And now all of these idols are defunct. They are now totally annihilated. They are no longer in action. So no one will come and give them any homage, any puja, any worship, any money, any resources. Financially, they will be all bankrupt and dead. Their business. That's why they were saying, what? They didn't want to do that. But those who, of course, understood already that there cannot be more than one God, of course they realized, indeed, it must be it. That was just from his statement and claim alone, from his character. Not looking at any other evidence. The only evidence those were impressed by is his 40 years of life in which he demonstrated the purity of character, truthful, reliable. Okay, so they turned later on, instead of accepting this call, to fight him, to oppose him, to stop him calling people to the worship of one God. Yeah, worship of one God. That was their problem with him. So when he started calling people later on, stop burying your daughters alive. Of course, it was a tradition that was so much in their blood and their skin or bones. It's in my blood, in my flesh and blood. So much that it requires for them to really wake up. Like, why am I burying my daughters alive? So when the Quran came with that message, it really woke some people and said, yeah, we should stop doing that practice. But others, for them, this is our tradition. Why are we going to? So these kind of revolutionary ideas that goes against societal norms, people can react to and oppose. It's a natural thing. Those who are
even before the Prophet, we've seen it with Jesus, and we've seen it probably before that as well. And when with Moses or Musa, whatever you want to call him, people were opposed to him when he came to Egypt and tried to exile the Jews. People were against the Ten Commandments. People were worshipping idols even then. So we've seen this before. We've seen the connection.
Yeah.
We've seen
so there's a human nature in which they oppose and react to something that goes against their tradition, their desires, their feelings, and what they're happy and comfortable with. That's a natural and not a normal thing for in most societies. So what happened then? He gave them the message of the Qur'an. That message was what? Worship the Satan? Worship the creation? Worship me? None of that. He said, no, worship the one who created all of these things. Because the one who deserves your worship is the one who gave you life, who brought everything to existence. Now, that message itself, if you examine the message now, it's sensible. It's something that your heart and your mind will say, yeah, why am I going to worship a tree, a man or a woman, or the moon, or the sun, or the rivers? Makes no sense. These are all limited, dependent, finite things which are not worthy of our worship. Is my umbrella worthy of worship? Why not?
Created by a man.
Okay. Why should you worship an umbrella? But there are people who believe God can become an umbrella and still be a God. So that's what we need to start thinking about, why people believe in such a things. That's another discussion. So, coming to this point. So the message that he brought about don't worship idols or anything of the creation, but worship God, is not a message inspired by any evil things. It's a message of purity and truth. That's what you expect from a sound intellect to accept. Okay. The way he then brought the message is the second evidence that comes in now, assessing the message that he brought.
Yeah.
When he brought this message, the Quran came in a language which was familiar and yet unfamiliar to them. What do I mean by that?
So he was illiterate, but he could speak Arabic.
It was familiar yet unfamiliar. And what do I mean by that? So he brought the Quran in the Arabic language, the language of the people.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if the
Quran,
Quran,
he was an ethnic Arabic.
If the Quran came in Chinese, they would not know what it means. No. Exactly, right? It was in Arabic, but they noticed a subtle difference. It came in a form that was not only beautiful, eloquent, full of meaning, but something else in a way that is composed that they realized this is not something that they could do. And what I mean by that is this. Arabs at that time, they took pride in two things. One is the birth of a child. What kind of child? Son or a daughter? Son, because they would bury their daughters alive. Why they would bury their daughter alive? They will take the daughters at whatever point, they will take that daughter and bury her alive. Why? Because they considered, in their faulty thinking, that's a financial liability, because they have to look after her and marry her off with everything, and then they don't have that financial resource. Just like today, how people abort female fetuses. It hasn't changed. People do that. They abort. If the fetus is female, they abort it. So this kind of infanticide, of female infanticide, still rampant in today's society. But anyway, that's another discussion. So they would pride themselves in two things. One is the birth of a son. It's not a daughter anymore. They don't have to bury, because the son will accompany them, bring them honor and glory, and fight with them and work with them and so on. So that's how they made themselves really, really happy and proud, right? That was point one. Assalamu alaikum. The other thing that they're proud about, and they celebrated, is the composition of poetry. They love poetry so much that they used to hold competitions in the markets, like Market of Wakaz. They'd go there, and the best poem they would hang on the wall of the Kaaba. Remember, Kaaba to them is a very sacred place. Okay? They would worship the idols within the Kaaba. There were many idols inside the Kaaba. And when Prophet Muhammad came, of course, he destroyed all of them from the Kaaba, cleansed it. But this is how Kaaba, the cube, Muslims circumambulate in Hajj. Yeah. This was the first house built for the worship of God, right? So they would hang the poem, the best of them, in the wall of the Kaaba. That's why they are called mu'allaqat, the hanging, suspended poems. And some of those poems are available to us today. Available. We can still read them. Translated by A.J. Arbery. It's called the Seven Odes. You can read about it. Even in English, how he captures the beauty and the way they describe things. Really, really nice, right? So they were masters in oration, masters in eloquence, masters in the way how they describe their loved ones. If they describe something like sorrowful, you would cry. If they describe a woman in her beauty, you would lust for her. If they describe something about like this particular tribe is an enemy, you would be ready to fight them. This is the power of speech that they had. They excelled in this capability. So poetry was their thing, right? When the Qur'an came in response to this in the Arabic language, saying, look, this man for 40 years of his life has not been taught how to read or write, has not been taught how to read any scripture, because you know him. He grew up among you. So the Creator, gave them the Qur'an, says, okay, if you really have doubt that he is now a recipient of revelation, produce something like it, because you are the masters of language. If you can't do it yourself, do it all together. Have your support, except God, except Allah. But if you don't do it, and the Qur'an says you'll never be able to do it, then fear the fire whose fuel is man and stones. So what did they do then? Yeah, man will fuel the fire of hell and stones. Now we know how stones can really bring hot fire, heat. But men will be the fuel of fire. Which men? The one who deserves it. Men mean humankind. Men, yeah. So the point is, the Qur'an gave them an opportunity to falsify the Qur'an. To say, look, if you really think he's not a prophet, all you have to do with your mastery of Arabic language, with your eloquence in the language, produce a chapter. Whole Qur'an you can't do it? No problem. How about 10 chapters? You can't do 10 chapters? How about one chapter, one surah? And how long is one chapter? The shortest chapter is how long? About 3 lines, 3-4 lines. So it wouldn't be difficult for them. But did they manage to compose something like the Qur'an. We have historical testimony of the people saying, لَيْسَ هَذَا كَلَامُ الْبَشَرِ. This is not the sayings of a human being. It's impossible. So this tradition continued to this day, and people have written for hundreds of years the so-called attempts people are doing. Do you think people have stopped attempting? You can go on the internet, surah like it, and you will see that, oh, there you go, that's what an imitation is. But all of these attempts, they amount to naught, zero. Why? Because they don't even understand. Some of them bring Psalms 23 in English. They think, there you go, it's an imitation of the Quran.
Mention that about poetry, you're saying that Islam has the best poetry in terms of beauty, in its language, in its literature. But poetry is another aspect of culture which has existed before religion. So you see poetry in other religions as well. You see it in Hinduism, in the Vedas, in the Bhagavad Gita.
Poetry is everywhere.
Exactly.
That's not the point.
So I don't get why do you make
I'm
it...
explaining.
Yeah.
The point is the way things are composed. Like when Shakespeare wrote his sonnets,
Exactly.
you can be genius like Shakespeare and imitate it. When Paul, the author of many letters in the New Testament, when he wrote his letters, you know, scholars today of the New Testament, they say this letter,
He didn't write that.
he didn't write it,
I don't
but
believe that. I don't believe he wrote that. I never believe that.
but do you know why they say that?
Why?
Because it is not in the style of Paul. Paul has a particular way of writing. So when they see another writing not like him, they'll say, Paul didn't compose and author this letter. So people have own composition, way of writing. Okay? What the Quran is saying, now you've understood it. Bring something like the composition of the Quran. So people, instead of writing, imitating the Quran, they didn't understand the message, they write something in English. Total misunderstanding of the challenge of the Quran is. If I say bring an umbrella like this one, yeah? And you bring, is that like this umbrella? This umbrella is particular length, particular color, particular structure, shape and so on. This is nothing like it. This is matter and this is matter. That's not how this is similar. So you need to bring another umbrella, but what if you bring an umbrella which was all white? I would still say it's not like it, because that one is white. Yeah. So when the Quran says bring a chapter like it, you need to know how the likeness of the Quran is. And the Quran has been objectively shown of its composition, how the Quran is in its structure. This is what we call stylistics.
Question. If you're saying that there's nothing like the Quran, same way you could bring the exact copy of this umbrella, there's an exact copy of this umbrella like this. Am I right or am I wrong in saying that?
We didn't say bring exact, similar.
Okay, but they're in the same color, weight and everything. This is the only umbrella that was ever invented.
You can bring an umbrella and say this is why similar. Similar in the...
I'm saying that there was more than one umbrella that was created in the same way, in this pattern, this color, the same way. So like when you to shop and bought this umbrella,
Quran doesn't say bring exactly like the Quran, word for word, letter for letter, sound for sound.
I'm saying,
in that way, what you'll bring the same Quran.
But then you could say scriptures before that existed before the Quran are similar in a way.
No.
How are they not?
To give you an example, it's going to rain soon. To give you an example, when the Quran says, for example, first chapter, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, praise, all gratitude be to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds.
Hear, O Israel, your Lord, or the Lord our God is one.
You're not focusing on what I'm saying.
Repeat.
So in Arabic structure, it is such that this is way the Arabs never spoke in any of their literature. They have prose, they have poetry, sayings of the Kuhan, the Kahin. They don't speak like this. They never use this particular word, hamd, to praise in the beginning of a sentence with a definitive noun like alhamdu. They will say hamdan, yeah, with a indefinite article, yeah, not a definite article, the praise. When it says Rabbul Alameen, Lord of all the Alameen, the Arabs never had in their vocabulary a word which is Alameen, in a plural form of Alam, meaning world. Because to them, there is only one world, Alam. So how can you bring something like Alameen? It's like, did people have a vocabulary, globalization, 500 years ago, in English, globalization.
That wasn't a word.
That wasn't a word. So when the Quran says globalization, imagine for example like that, they would say, what is this? But when the Quran in context explain globalization is this phenomena, they'll say, oh, this is what it is. But you cannot imitate in a structure like this.
You're telling me the words that existed in the Quran were never spoken before the Prophet arrived.
Now you're getting this. So the Quran brought a linguistic innovation, revolution, in which it brought about the forms and derivations of words from the root which is understood, which the Arabs never knew of.
It never existed before.
It never existed. For example, or it brought the words or sentences in a meaning that didn't exist. For example, the very word the Qur'an, the Arabs never knew this form Qur'an and what it means. The Qur'an has to bring and explain what it is. It's a book, revelation from God. They knew, this is what it is. Because they had the word qara'a yaqra'u, the word to read, to recite, but the form in this gerund it's called, they never had that particular word Qur'an. They never had the word surah in its meaning, because to them surah is like a fence. But the Qur'an is using the surah to mean a chapter of the Qur'an. The verse in Arabic is an ayah. Ayah, Qur'an says it's a sign, it's a miracle, it's an evidence. For them, it's all new. So the Qur'an changes the meaning of the word and it brings about all of these things. So this is about how words are used, the placement of words and prepositions and nouns and verbs, whether it's a nominal sentence, like you start with a noun, or you start with a verb, or you start with a preposition, how they're constructed. We're talking about linguistic construction. These form, when the Qur'an brought it, they could not imitate it because they don't speak like that. For example, when I say, I am about to go, I don't say, I is about to go. You'd say, what are you talking about? Speak English, man. You don't say, I is going, you say, I am going. You don't say, I are going. Do you see that thing? So when the Quran brought a structure, and if they were to imitate it, they cannot imitate with, say, a substitute, with another synonym or something, in this form. It just becomes laughable. To give you one example of a laughable example. لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. There's an ayah like this in the Quran. No bearer can bear the sins of another. Everyone is individual, responsible for their own actions, right? So the word is mim la, yeah? To hamal, to carry. When it becomes in this form, if you want to... No, the word is wazara. Yeah. Wazara. I will let you speak.
No bearer of... I just want to hear that.
No bearer is going to bear the burden of another.
So no human can bear the sin of another human?
Yes, everyone is responsible for their own sin.
Yeah.
Right. So the word is wazir, the bearer of burden, with surah ukhra. If you were to substitute with this with the word ha mim la, and you put it there, hamila, yahmil, and hamilatun wizra ukhra, it becomes laughable in this form, because hamilatun automatically changes into meaning of a pregnant lady. You wanted to say no bearer of burden will bear the another, you will say no bearer of burden bears the pregnancy of another. It becomes laughable, something like that.
No one can bear the pregnancy of a pregnant woman.
It becomes like a pregnant woman, because the word now changes into a meaning. Hamila in Arabic is a pregnant woman.
Okay, yeah, I follow it.
A pregnant. Yeah. So in this particular form, when you try to put something there to imitate it, it doesn't work.
But we see this in other languages as well, like in lexicon, you can't, like in different
you could.
Yeah.
But the Quran is bringing an attention, a challenge in the Arabic language to the masters of the Arabic language. If you think the Quran is not from God, you should be able to imitate it. So he gave you a structure of how to imitate, and then people fail to imitate it. Even ChatGPT failed to imitate it. I have a whole 1-hour lecture on the internet. Type in ChatGPT, Qur'an, imitation, and Mansur, and you get that video. Helping the ChatGPT every way possible. Okay, can you, as a non-human, can you actually, with this objective criteria in mind, imitate the Qur'an? At the end, it's impossible because of the very nature of it. So, when the Qur'an brought a falsification test, and no one, in fact, the Qur'an says, "Kulla in ijtama'at al-ins wal jinn." Even if the whole of human beings and the jinn were to come together collectively to produce something like the Qur'an, لا يأتون بمثله. They will never be able to bring something like it. So the Qur'an is not restricted to one individual. You might say, Imo, I don't speak Arabic. Qur'an doesn't restrict that challenge only to you. Go and help, ask for help, of your helpers and supporters to do this job. Go to SOAS, where they teach Arabic language. Go to Oxford, Cambridge, go to Harvard, go to all these places where people study in university level, have PhDs in Arabic language. But why is it still to this day people fail? Why are educated Muslims who have learned Arabic language to PhD level, done their PhDs, still remain a Muslim? If having a grasp of the language, they realize you can imitate it. Because once you become a very prolific writer, someone who can produce literature, poet and so on, and you're an Arab, and you've mastered the language, you would know yourself whether you can imitate it or not. So why is that hundreds and thousands of millions of Muslims who are educated like that, they still remain Muslims and say it cannot be imitated?
It's the same thing for Christians who have PhDs,
And?
Hindus who have PhDs,
And?
atheists who have PhDs.
No, what's your point?
I'm saying that PhD, like you're
No, you don't understand the point. I am saying, if educated Muslim in Arabic language, through their education, they realize that the Qur'anic challenge is actually a hocus pocus, because you can make something like it, then to remain as a Muslim, you really have to be a hypocrite. Do you follow? To still say I'm a Muslim and you know that challenge doesn't make sense because I can imitate it, then you are really behaving like a hypocrite and say, I still as a Muslim. But inwardly you don't believe. Why are they still believing? It's because they know from their knowledge that it cannot be imitated.
So you're saying that anyone who studies Arabic,
Anyone.
reads the Quran,
Anyone who has mastered in the Arabic language, like the Qur'an, they would know without shadow of doubt that the Qur'an cannot be
and
imitated.
if they don't follow, if they study Arabic and read the Quran and still choose not to follow Islam.
No, that's not about following. My point is, Qur'an offers a challenge.
Yeah.
Challenge to falsify it, to bring something.
So do you mean, what do you mean by
Falsify meaning.
I'm really glad to meet you.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Falsify meaning, if you were to bring a chapter, a surah like the Qur'an, then the Qur'anic claim is false. You would prove that the Qur'an can be imitated, and because it can be imitated, it cannot be from God. Because the Qur'an is saying it cannot be it cannot be imitated because God made it like that.
Can I disprove what you're saying by bringing in another concept? Can I do that?
You can try.
So you were talking about how the Quran is like, its poetry is like, it's beautiful in its poetry.
Composition.
In its composition. But then
Inimitable in its
you could
composition.
go to a Hindu
And
they'll tell you that the Vedas, so specifically the back of the Veda, is beautiful in how it's written in Sanskrit, and that they literally believe
is it composition impossible, unimitable?
I'm not sure about that, but
Imagine now, to help you.
Yeah.
Imagine someone claims the Vedas cannot be imitated. You can get ChatGPT to imitate it.
how though?
Because the composition of the Veda, if you look at the
Why do you say
stylistics,
imitated? Because
Imitating
you
in
believe that-
stylistics.
Yeah, okay, in stylistics, okay, cool. But in terms of narratives, not the beauty.
we're not talking about beauty and eloquence. You need to understand, Imo, I am not talking about eloquence.
Okay.
I'm not talking about beauty because these are all subjective.
So what are you talking about then?
I'm talking about the objective criteria of stylistics. In language, there's something called stylistics, how something is spoken. So I talked about placement of words, right? If you were to place a noun before, or a verb before, or a preposition before, and so on, how you place it, and how it affects the meaning. So if you were to imitate it like this, and then you realize by imitating it, it becomes
Creates a fallacy though.
What fallacy?
So the way you compose a sentence can change its meaning, right? You agree with that?
When the Quran composes a sentence or an ayah, it has a meaning.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say bring similar meaning to it. It says, look, using this
So
structure,
you're telling me it has objective meaning to it? Every single sentence in the Quran.
try to understand what I'm saying.
I'm trying to.
The Quran is a book, literary book, right? Overall.
Yeah. No, but sorry, I just quickly cut you off. My friend told me that the Quran is, you shouldn't consider it as a book instead of a verbal, like an oral thing.
No. The Quran is a book. The Quran is called a kitab. The Quran is a book which is orally as well as written form. Quran has never been without a written form and has never been without an oral form. So the Quran, the Prophet didn't write it,
Exactly.
so he recited the whole book.
But it was written after he died.
Please. No. It was written, he dictated every single word that is in the Quran. So how can it be written after him?
So you're telling me the Quran was written while he was alive?
Hear me out
I
again.
just wanna ask, so I'm not sure.
Hear me out.
Yeah.
Every single word of the Quran was dictated by the Prophet.
Memorized?
You're not picking up the point.
Yeah.
Imo, listen. The Qur'an has 114 chapters, about 6,000 ayats, right? Roughly. Few hundred pages. Within that, every single word was dictated by the Prophet in his presence. Scribes wrote it. They read it back to him aloud. And this is how the Qur'an was written in front of him.
Okay.
So what wasn't done was during his lifetime, the Qur'an was composed as one book with two covers at the end. Everyone had their writings. They were spread. They were spread in the writings of scrolls, in the shoulder blade of a camel, or in the leaf of a palm fiber stalk, or in stones, and so on and so forth. Right?
That's a question then. So we can all agree that the Prophet was illiterate.
Of course, he was
so
not.
How could he know what they were writing was in fact what he was saying?
Okay.
We can't. How do you know?
Imagine now I tell you, write this to me in your language, right?
Yeah.
قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ.
Impossible.
Okay, right. Okay, write this. God is one.
Yeah, I can write that.
In your language, and you just, I say, okay.
Well, that's because I'm literate. I can write. I can read and write.
I mean, you asked me a question and allow me to answer.
Yeah.
Then I say, okay, fine. I don't know what you've written. Read it to me back, and read it exactly. God is one. So, am I convinced that you have written it correctly?
But the Prophet cannot be 100% convinced.
Wait.
Yeah.
I dictated to you, and I told you to memorize it.
Yeah.
Remember, two forms.
Yeah, so it was memorized before it was written down. I'm sorry.
Simultaneous.
Okay.
Simultaneous.
Okay.
Memorized and written form.
Okay.
God is one. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. God is one and unique, right? You wrote it. The brother wrote it. Bilal wrote it. This brother wrote it, right? I said, okay, you read it. He says, God is one. God is one. God is one. You say, God is one. So I know that you've written it correctly. Then I said, okay, have you memorized it? I've told you, because this is life and death, like this is speech of God. He says, yeah, God is one. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. You teach them. And that's not it. That's to the end of this particular verse. You would then read it to get reward. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So many times a day. You would recite it in your prayers. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. In Ramadan, you would read it so many times. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So this particular ayah, it's not that only once it was in history and that was it. No. You cannot make it disappear from history. Every ayah like that. So this is how the Quran was preserved in memory and as well as written form. So when the Quran was composed like that, we're talking about the composition. People to imitate it, they have to put in that structure, and they're failing that today. So this is what we're saying. It's a living miracle of the Quran, a living evidence that the Quran is indeed divine. Why? Because to this day, people cannot imitate it. They've imitated Shakespeare. If you have phone now, you can ask ChatGPT, can you imitate that sonnet of Shakespeare? It will do it. Few seconds. Why? Because human speech is imitable. Human composition is imitable. You can imitate the style. And that's why many forgeries happen throughout time. Later on, with a very fine tooth and eye, people said, that's a forgery, even though many things went unnoticed like that. They were so clever in imitating something. But at the end of the day, still, the point I'm making is human composition. Whether it's music, whether it's poetry, it's imitable. Qur'an stands clear from all of that literature and says you cannot imitate it. That's number one evidence for the Qur'an. Secondly, out of many falsification tests and evidence, Qur'an says, had this book been from other than God, surely you'd find many discrepancies and errors. And that makes sense. A book that talks about history, that talks about what's going to happen in the future, that talks about natural world, today we can say, I'm sure it can get something wrong, because people are back in those days, they knew not much about the reality. We, today with our current science and technology, we have learned about our world much better than what they thought earlier. They thought human beings were created with menstrual blood, which is in the Bible. In the Bible. Quran didn't copy any of those things, because the Quran doesn't copy anything, because it's from God.
Well, so can you explain why there are similarities in narrative Obviously, I'm not saying that it's not 100% similar.
I will explain to remind me about this, inshallah. Why there's similarities. But the point I'm making is the Qur'an could get so many things wrong, as you expect, logically speaking. A book 1400 years ago, how would the book know about what we have discovered about the universe today? That we know now the stars are receding from each other. The universe is expanding.
The ancient Egyptians knew all about that as well.
The ancient universe didn't know everything.
They knew about the sun, they knew about...
Did the ancient universe know that there is a common origin of the universe and the universe expanding? Because the ancient...
No. That was founded by a Christian.
Sorry?
The Big Bang Theory, that was founded by a Christian.
Which Christian?
The priest.
French.
Yeah, the French priest.
Which French?
Initial, he was like the initial.
Yeah, the first person.
This is after the invention of science. So.
You talk about the Big Bang.
You're talking about long after the Qur'an.
Yeah.
When the Qur'an talks about أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Do not the unbelievers see that the heavens and the earth was joined together as one piece and God parted it asunder and He brought every living thing from water? Would they then not believe? Quran is telling you that there was a common origin of our earth and our universe, and then there was a separation, asunder, ratak and fatak. It's like Big Bang, as they say. I'm not saying this is Quran is talking about the Big Bang, but the Quran is clearly telling you about the common origin of the universe and our earth and the separation afterwards. So information like this, you expect the Quran to get it wrong. Why? Because this requires a lot of scientific advanced tools to know this. Can you see the universe expanding? Look up. You can't. You can't see the universe expanding. You can't see the stars going away from each other. A lot of science and theory of science, models of science is required. So when the Quran talks about that mountains have a specific feature, today you might think, yeah, of course, but back then it's impossible. Okay, describe me a mountain.
A mountain is a landscape, a type of landscape.
Yeah.
Where
not how it's formed, but this description of its external features.
So it's upward lifting.
Upward lifting.
Yeah. Has
Yeah.
a high up to a high altitude.
Correct, but partially correct. Why I say that? Because this is just the surface of the mountains that you see. Most of the mountain has downward elevation, what we call the roots of the mountains. Most of it is downward. Have you heard of tip of the iceberg?
Yes.
What we see above the sea of the ocean
It's nothing compared
is
to
just a little bit of tip and the rest is downwards.
Yeah.
Quran describes mountains like that. It's like autad, mountain having roots. Who would have known mountains have roots like this? Can you go into a mountain near Himalayas and say, mountain, it has more roots than that? You can't start digging and finding out, impossible. Through our technology today that we know mountains do indeed, because it's not just digging and digging and digging that you know mountains have roots. Other technologies, sonars, they reflect back how far the level is and so on and so forth. So information like this, you expect the Quran to get it wrong, not to give information which we discovered today. So the Quran, when it says, if it wasn't from God, you expect surely to find many errors and discrepancies like that. So this is another falsification test Quran offers to falsify it. Because if a sincere researcher goes and finds an error in the Quran, they are in the right mind to reject the Quran. Because according to the standards of the Quran, very criteria of the Quran, it cannot be from God. Have people succeeded in finding an error in the Quran? You'll find...
Some people
No,
believe they have.
they claim.
Yeah, claim.
We have been coming here. We've been present in our World Wide Web. No one is able to demonstrate an error in the Quran. I used to talk about it every single week, few years back. Why is it impossible to demonstrate? So this is maybe you can ask the critics of Islam. Have you found any? If you can't find any, then ask yourself, why are you unable to find an error? Error we expect it to find. A book that is not just any book free from any errors is from God. That's not what we're saying. A book like the Quran, you expect it to have errors. If I give you a phone book with no mistakes, everyone's phone number is correct, it doesn't prove it's from God. Yeah? But If I give you a book that talks about the ancient history, what happened 1,000 years ago, what they did and what they left, and I talk about what will happen in the future, it cannot get it all wrong. Imagine the Qur'an says, oh, look at those two superpowers, the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire. Oh, the Romans have been defeated. But soon what will happen is they will regain victory. They will regain victory between 3 and 9 years. It's easily falsifiable after 3 and 9 years. On the 10th year, if they didn't regain victory, the Quran would have been false.
Oh, so the Quran predicted the fall of...
That's what the Quran says. غُلِبَتُ الرُّومِ. The Romans have been defeated. في أدنى الأرض.
And the Ottoman Empire, he was...
Not the Ottoman. We're talking about the Persian and the Byzantine.
Okay, but I'm talking about the fall of the Roman, after the Romans took over.
This is talking about the Romans and the Persians.
Okay, okay. No,
Yep.
okay. So that's the Quran before, way before.
So the Quran is revealed when it's unnecessary for an imposter prophet to have his prophethood on stake. What if it turns out to be false? Then he's going to be a false prophet and the Quran is going to be a false book. Easy. You know, many people say the world's going to come to an end in 2020, in 1987, whatever. And when that year comes, we know that they were liars. They are fraudsters. Yeah. So the Quran was an ample opportunity for the critics of Islam to demonstrate to the whole world Islam is a false religion, Quran is a false book claiming to be from God, and Prophet Muhammad is a false prophet, an imposter. But it exactly turned out to be as the Quran said. How do you predict between two superpowers that, imagine now somebody says, oh, Russia in 2 years later will overthrow America. How can you say that? I mean, you don't even have no idea what's going to happen in the future. It's easy to prove you're wrong. 2 years later, that's right.
So what does the future hold then, according to the Quran?
So the Quran, brother, what I'm saying, the Quran gives you all these falsification tests to prove it wrong, and people cannot falsify it, okay? Now your question about similarities. You asked about how is the Quran similar? If the same God sent Prophet Moses to a group of people to guide them through the prophets, why wouldn't the Quran remind the next generation people, us for example, their mistakes, their errors, and their good things they've done, to learn from it? Why do we learn history, read history? Because history can teach us a lesson of how not to behave. When we go to Greek and other places and we see the ruins, shouldn't that be a reminder to us what happens to people when they become so arrogant and do corruption and so on? It's not like, oh, look what happened, beautiful. It's really mind-boggling how people totally misunderstand history. They go for sightseeing, take some selfies. You should be asking yourself, that empire that they built, why they were destroyed? What happened to them? No traces left apart from few stones. God tells us the reason why we should learn history, because history is an evidence of what can happen to people if they misbehave, if they do things which is not in accordance with God's law. Yeah. So when the Quran reminds people of what happened to the people who called themselves Christians, they venerated Christ so much they elevated him into a God. And God says, no, desist. Your God, your Lord is one. He doesn't have a son, and God is not a trinity. So the Quran corrects them. So of course Quran engages with the previous people's belief system to show what is correct and what is false. That's why similarities are there and differences are there.
But would you agree with me if I say even Islam has a bad history as well?
What do you mean by bad history?
I want to say bad, but it has obviously in the early stages of Islam, there was conflict, the Crusades.
Islam didn't initiate the Crusades.
Okay.
What are the Crusades? Do you know?
But then even within Saudi Arabia, they had to fight.
Do you know what the Crusades are?
Yeah.
When Islam is expanding, where is it expanding? To some other lands. Yeah. Whose lands? The lands by the Christians and the Roman Empire and so on and so forth. So they are now really concerned to protect their lands and their belief and so on. So they started fighting back, okay? But they fought back unjustly. They not only killed the Jews and Muslims can never fight unjustly. The principle of Islam is you fight those who fight you, but do not commit transgression.
So what do you have to say to jihadists? So like 9/11, they did what they did in the name of Allah.
The Americans?
To them, yeah.
Who did it?
No, I'm saying the terrorists.
regardless of who's done it, killing innocent people is unacceptable, wrong, totally
Even if
unacceptable.
Muslims do it, can you say that?
Even if Muslims do things which are un-Islamic, it's wrong. If a Muslim goes on and then takes the life of an innocent individual, he's a criminal or she's a criminal, and they should face justice.
So Osama bin Laden, he orchestrated 9/11.
I'm not going to talk about any individual. I'm saying anyone. Because have you spoken to Osama bin Laden?
I've never spoken to him.
Exactly. So you don't know what he believed, what he said, and so on.
Have you spoken to him?
No, that's why I'm saying we cannot speak about people. We cannot speak about individuals and so on. We leave them, but we look at the apparent actions. If some people or some organizations say it's okay to kill innocents, they're totally wrong. Okay?
Jihadists as well. And to an extent, if
Look. Again, you are not stating things wrongly. In Islam, we should all do jihad, including yourself.
Yes, but the interpretation.
Wait. Now you're saying yes,
Yeah.
when you said no earlier. So now let's do, what is jihad?
Yeah.
Look,
What is jihad? Jihad is the internal and external struggle. Internal struggle is where you try to elevate yourself from your desires of your own self to become a truly human being with good, noble character. Uplift yourself in your nobility and your character, right? That is your internal struggle, jihad. The external jihad is to remove oppression from the land, from the society. So you would, for example, if someone came to attack you, if someone came to attack you, you would not sit there and say, oh, here is my brother, little brother there. Look, listen. The enemy comes to attack you, you're not going to say, oh, here's my little brother hiding under the bed, go and kill him. Islam is not a cowardice religion. Islam is a religion of justice. And say, look, these enemies are coming with injustice. They want to kill, they want to annihilate from people from existence. They want to create havoc in society and corruption in society. So you resist, you fight them. So in Islam there's a mechanism of that, where it's not all individual will do that, you will do that by its state. The state will have its army to protect its citizen, Muslim or non-Muslim. So if you are a non-Muslim in an Islamic state, in an Islamic country where Islam is implemented, an enemy comes, they will protect you, make sure they protect you too. That is the justice of Islam. So jihad and jihadists are different things. Jihad is a very just universal principle what every human being should accept, because it's all about justice. Okay, so now let's come back again to the point we're discussing. The Prophet, he cannot be an imposter when you look at his life again. So not only the evidence is brought that speaks for itself, but when we look at his life, so we talked about his truthfulness and reliability. What about his motive? Did he have a material motive, some kind of spiritual motive?
He's imperialistic.
Maybe he's whatever. Look, if you examine that, every single motive falls apart. Say someone wanted to some kind of, I want to be famous, that's why I'm doing it. Don't people do silly things on the social media? Silly things, really silly things. Eating kerosene or diesel and say, look at that. And people like and goes viral and say, look at that, I'm famous. But by doing so, they're saying how crazy they are. So he could have done something like, I want to be famous. But when he brought the message to Islam and they didn't like his message of unity, this pure monotheism, they even offered him, look, what do you want? You want to be famous? We'll make you the most famous among us. We'll make you the king. He rejected. So that means he didn't have this kind of motives of being famous. What if he wanted money? Well, he said, we will give you all the money. We will make you the richest among us. He rejected it. Oh, maybe he was a womanizer. He wanted all the women. He said, look, you wanted women? Just name them. We'll give you all the women. Who are saying this? The allied tribal leaders. Because to them, if they say like, go to this man, you belong to him now, they will listen. That's a tribal society. Even today in Africa, if a tribal leader decides something, they all listen. So he was not after women, he was not after money, he was not after wealth, he was not after status, he was not after fame. What was his motive then?
We've seen other religious leaders reject all the other vices as well.
So,
Buddha came from
what was his? Okay, let's talk about the Prophet.
He came from a rich family.
What was the motive of the Prophet, you
He
think?
rejected all
No, what was the motive you think of the Prophet Muhammad Islam?
to
Could it
share
be?
Islam.
To
share Islam to everyone.
So he's sharing
So his
Islam.
wife was the first Muslim, right?
Hang on. So he is sharing Islam, meaning to worship one God. Now, why would he do that unless he is speaking the truth? Was he speaking the truth, that this is a good thing?
Yeah, he probably believed he was speaking the truth. The same way Buddha
now,
probably
okay.
thought he was
So so was he someone of the impression that he sincerely believed he was speaking the truth?
I believe he believed.
So he was not deluded, but he was sincerely mistaken. Now here is the additional problem. Someone can sincerely believe they are the King of England. You can believe you're the King of England. What's going to happen to you? You go there in Buckingham Palace.
Laugh at them.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you sincerely believe something, the evidence will go against you. If you believe I'm the Prophet of God, and you don't have any evidence to demonstrate, you'll become a laughing stock. So when he was interacting with the people, they saw miracles.
Were you using the
Miracles.
Yeah.
Quran is the ultimate miracle, but other miracles. So when he pointed to the moon and it split, it was evidence on the people who saw it. Because no one can do such a thing. So his evidence proved to the people that he was indeed a prophet of God.
So when you bring up the fact that the prophet refused to have all the wealth of the nation, refused to have all the wives and everything, are you using that as evidence to prove that what he was saying was true? Because if you are,
no, I am rejecting. Wait. I'm rejecting the motives that is in operation for this man, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we cannot find any motive whatsoever, and you're saying, oh, he sincerely believed, then I'm going to bring additional questions now. He sincerely believes he's a prophet, but he's not the all-wise. He doesn't know all the intricate details of past history. Neither does he have the access of the unknown, the unseen, of the future. So how does he reveal information of the future? How does he prophesy something that will happen in the future? How does he know information which is not possible to know without scientific advancements? You can be sincere. You can be sincere, but you cannot have this information. So the information itself would be an evidence against this belief that he was just sincerely believing in things. It will prove otherwise that he was a recipient of revelation. Because only revelation can explain what he has brought. That's why we're saying, when we look at Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have no reason not to accept him. Because you can consider him the most wise, the cleverest statesman, the leader, political leader, the economist, the anthropologist, the biologist, the astrophysicist, whatever. But why are you not only ready to accept that it was none of his thing? It was a revelation given to him. That's what he says. It's not of me to tell you about these things. God reveals to me and I'm giving this to you. So to know that someone is a prophet of God, this is the internal critique that you have to do, like yourself, Imo, and ask yourself, what does it demonstrate? It doesn't demonstrate he's just copying the past, he's guessworking in the future, because even guesswork has a limitation, but he gets it all right. So it doesn't make sense to a sound mind that this man could have just produced this book, because this book is now one of the biggest and the mightiest obstacle to people in terms of belief system, because if they don't believe in it, they have to rationally justify their non-belief. Because the Qur'an is gonna stand as an evidence against every single human being in the Day of Judgment. If they cannot explain the Qur'an and its source, that's why they try to say, oh, the Qur'an copied it, like you said, it's copied it. But when you go and say, like, why did it avoid the mistakes then? Why did it not say the Qur'an, the human beings are made from the menstrual blood? When you find things which it goes against, why does the Qur'an say Jesus was crucified? That's what everyone believed, right? It's the most common thing everywhere.
Well, the Muslim believe he was crucified?
No. Yeah. So why does the Qur'an not copy that? Yeah. Why is the Qur'an going against the Christians? If they want,
but they believe in immaculate conception.
Look. If the Qur'an, I'm giving you an example where there's a difference. Okay. Why doesn't the Qur'an tell the Christians, I believe that Christ was crucified. It's easy for you to believe, but it became an obstacle for them to believe. Why? Because that was the historical reality. He was not crucified. So when you examine the Qur'an in this nature, you'll realize the Qur'an, in its linguistic inimitability, in its falsification test of bringing proof a error or discrepancy, and the absence of that, and the information it provides of the natural world, the prophecies it makes of the future, it solidifies your scrutiny and saying, I am happy to submit and surrender. This information can only be from God. That's how one becomes a Muslim, by surrendering. Belief in Islam is a process of submission and surrender. What people don't realize, it's not that gut feeling. Quran says, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Know with certainty Certainty comes from what? This kind of knowledge that yes, now I know the Qur'an is from God. Now I know He's a messenger of God. And that's why when you say, I testify, testification of what? I testify meaning with my knowledge, with my sincerity, that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah alone. And I also testify that Prophet Muhammad is His messenger, His servant. That, yes, that internal realization in your heart is the first step of becoming a Muslim. The second step is showing that commitment. Not only I believe in that based on the evidence presented.
Well, I'll show it with my works.
Exactly. Commitment by I'm going to say I'm a Muslim, by declaring it, and then by when I'm entered in the fold of Islam, I will behave as a Muslim. I will act as a Muslim. I will do the actions of a Muslim. So when it's Ramadan, I will fast. But before that, in your heart, there are many hundreds and thousands of people, they believe in the goodness of fasting. They don't have to fast, it's voluntary for them. But when it comes to the month of Ramadan, you have to fast if you're well and fit and you're not in a journey, for example, and so on. When the conditions are met, you will have to fast, it's obligatory. When it's time for prayer, you will have to pray, unless you are really sick or something like that. If the conditions are met, that you're able to pray, you should pray 5 times a day. Okay? There's no excuse, because you will be sinful, liable, accountable. That's why the declaration of the statement of belief, entering Islam, is so important. And it is seen a prerequisite of someone and their consequence in the hereafter. It's not believe in the heart and you die on it and that's it. God demands, expects from you that you make that statement and you die on that belief. So when you make that statement and you die on that statement, God has promised you paradise. So to make that statement, it's not easy. It really requires that much courage and conviction with certainty and truthfulness and sincerity, so that people say, now, I want to become a Muslim because I want to show my love, my gratitude to my Creator. Okay? Because the universe, remember your initial belief of the pantheistic universe, this universe doesn't demand anyone, didn't send a book or a prophet or a messenger saying, believe in me and worship me and show gratitude. It doesn't do anything. That's why many Eastern traditions are like that, where you can believe in anything. Every way leads to God, it's okay. If you want to become a worshipper of a flower or a rat, doesn't matter.
Cows.
Yeah, they don't worship cow really, actually. It's a misunderstanding. They venerate, they venerate meaning it's respect, yeah. Because through this cow and all this thing, okay, it's not literally worship. But they have different other forms of avatars which they represent, like God has represented in these different avatars. You've seen the movie Avatar, right? And they say this is how we're worshipping that God represented in this pratima and this idol. But that's not the idol, God itself. So these traditions say it's okay, you can believe in anything and anyway. Islam says no. The Creator created you to be grateful to Him because He's the one who's given you that life. It is His right over you to show that gratitude. And based on that, He will give you happiness in the hereafter. Our life is not a joke. Why did God create us? For play and amusement? No. He created us with a purpose in which we can demonstrate whether we are worthy of that place He's created, place of happiness, or are we worthy of a place of torment, in which we will go by our own actions, by our own belief. We make that based on our belief and actions, what we do. God doesn't force anyone to believe in false beliefs. He has instilled within you, in your heart, the correct belief. We call the fitrah, the internal disposition, natural disposition of knowing God and worshipping God alone. Even babies, children, when they grow up, they know there is someone higher than them. Okay? So He's instilled that, and He reminds you of your natural disposition, which may have been covered by your upbringing in a particular family, like you may be in an atheist family or a Christian family or a fire-worshipping family, and they will cover that, what we call societal conditioning. Conditioning, brainwashing by the society, yeah. That's why the fitrah, the natural disposition, covers up, gets cloudy in the judgment. So the prophets and messenger, they come to uncover that truth, which is already in your heart, and give you evidence and proof to remind you that this is the truth. So once we know that, then accepting it willingly, willfully, truthfully, then we will be the recipient of God's mercy, and God will give us eternal, everlasting paradise in which there is no grief, there is no grief, there is no sorrow, there is no pain, there is no jealousy, there is no hatred. Love, tranquility, contentment, peace, happiness, joy, felicity. And what awaits, no eyes have seen, no ears have heard, no one have experienced. But God has given us certain,
As in the prophets.
yeah, God has given us certain similitude. To us, we have not seen anything like this. But the most happiest reward is seeing our Creator. The disbelievers who rejected Him, they will never, ever in their eternal hellfire damnation will see God. Imagine you love someone so much, you'd be so eager to see them, to meet them. So the believers who love God so much, they will see God without any unclarity, as it's so clear. Yeah, that is the highest reward that one can achieve. A believer strives for that. It is not that we believe as Muslims by following all these rituals and laws because of the fear of the punishment of God. No, that is one aspect true. But we have a balance of life. We fear the punishment of God by disobeying Him. But we also are hopeful of His reward and seeing Him. Yeah? So this between the hope and the punishment and the mercy and this expectation, right? That is a balanced way of life in which it puts you, your life, your whole everyday living in check. So that when the Qur'an says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, surely prayer will prevent you from all the bad things, the evil things, okay? The outrageous things. Do you know how it does that in a practical way? So now it's about 4 o'clock, 4:30, right? I will be going shortly now to pray one prayer called Salat al-Asr. If I was just an ordinary Muslim living around, or even a very pious Muslims, I would know and remember Salat al-Asr is due. Meaning what? I have to stand in front of my Lord, my Creator. What if I was doing something wrong? How am I going to stand in front of Him? Justifying it. I would be so ashamed. I would be so embarrassed. So you can imagine you have husband and wife, and you would know for sure that you would never want to do such a thing and go to your wife or your husband. You'll be so embarrassed. How could you have done that? This is just a mundane example. We're talking about وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. God is the highest description, no comparison. When you want to stand in front of God, you would feel so much embarrassed if you'd done something wrong. You said He was your Lord. You accept, when you pray, you start praying Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest. All praise and all gratitude belongs to the Lord, the Creator, the Sustainer, the Maker, right? The Nourisher, the Fashioner of this world. And He is the most merciful, because you are a living proof of His mercy. And it says, He is the Master of the Day of Judgment. Then why did you do all of that? All the bad things that you were about to do, He's gonna make you accountable for it. How can you justify all the bad things you do? You will be punished for it. And the punishment is so severe, our Prophet has explained how severe the punishment
At the
is.
same time, God is all loving.
Yeah. But it's important. If it was just love, people would not prevent themselves from committing evil actions. There has to be a balance. So that when a believer stands in front of God and he's going to say Maliki Yawmiddin or Maliki Yawmiddin, he is going to make sure that God is the King, the Master, the owner of the Day of Judgment. Of that realization, you would have already stopped him from doing. So that means when you're about living your life throughout your day, you are about to do something wrong, you will remember God. When you say, how can I stand in front of God 10 minutes later, an hour later, when I will not be able to justify anything? So that becomes a deterrent. It's a mercy from God that He's made us into this habitual ritual worship throughout the day, rather than one day a week like on a Saturday or on Sunday. Because it doesn't stop people from doing that. By having a throughout continuous connection with God, you are always going to be in remembrance of God. Because that's your objective of life. To be grateful to Him. Yeah? Everything that God approves of becomes worship. So when God says, when you interact with your friend, be nice, be just, be kind, be fair, this becomes worship. When you smile at your brother, it becomes charity, it becomes worship. So worshipping God is not just going to a mosque and worship. Every moment of your life, you can worship God. And you do that by following the ordinances, the commands, and avoiding the prohibitions, and so on and so forth. So Islam is that religion which your heart and your mind already agrees with. So ask yourself, Why are you not a Muslim right now? What is stopping you from accepting Islam? Is it because you want to learn Islam to the level where I want to know all the commentaries, what it says? No one can become so proficient and so knowledgeable on everything about the Qur'an. Even the scholars learn every day. Even the scholars. So you want to know everything the Prophet said. Hundreds and thousands of hadiths. You can stay and read all your life and you think there's so much a treasure. It's like you're dropping the ocean when you start. What is it? If you think this is the case, you'll never even finish the ocean of knowledge of Islam. But if you know that what it requires for you to Muslim is to be convinced that there is no God worthy of worship except one and only true God. If you're already on your heart, that's first part. If you agree that Prophet Muhammad is indeed a messenger of God, that's all requires two things. Accepting that he's a messenger of God, accepting God is the only one worthy of worship. That is the beginning of your journey to make you into fold of Islam, and then you take the journey of learning. Every day we learn. I'm trying to learn Arabic language, still learning. It's vast ocean. You see? So learning never stops. When you become a Muslim, have you stopped learning, brother? Right. So it's not that you have to learn everything. No, but there are certain essential things you need to understand. So we believe in what we call 5 pillars of Islam, you know, right? So we talked about the first pillar, which is the faith. The second pillar we talk about, which is the very foundation, we don't talk about, the prayer. Prayer is this connection with our Creator. We also talked about charity right now. Charity, zakah, is the money, the wealth, the poor people have on our wealth. 2.5% of our surplus wealth should be given every year to the poor and needy, okay? Because it's there right on our wealth. The other thing is about fasting, which we also talk about already. God,
I still fast as well sometimes.
yeah. So God wants us to show this kind of perseverance, the training, the development, where fasting makes people God conscious. That's what the Qur'an says.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So the other thing we also talked about, the Kaaba. So subconsciously or unconsciously, I've already talked about the belief that Muslims circumambulate in Hajj, right? Where we once in a lifetime, if we're physically able to, financially able to, we go there to make this pilgrimage where we say labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wan ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. Oh Lord, I'm present. Oh my Creator, oh my Lord, I'm here, I'm responding to this call. There's no partner with you. You are one and only. So this call that when you go there, it will transform your life. That you will show and connect yourself in the presence of the very monotheistic center in which idol worship was dismantled, pure monotheism established. You will remember this was the first house built to the worship of God. As you circumambulate, you will feel connection with your Creator. This is how in fact, everything in the universe, nothing stops and static. Everything revolves. Atoms and electrons, everything. This is their worship. So you would do that worship once in a lifetime, and it has many other benefits, demonstrating yourself this universal message of Islam, universal brotherhood of Islam. So 5 pillars. We believe in what is called the articles of faith. Believing in Allah, believing the prophets and messengers He sent. We talked about that already. Yeah. Because God is not the God of the Arabs. God is God of all, and all humans, and all other creation. So He sent prophets and messengers to communities before to guide them to the truth, with the same message of Islam. So we say we believe in all the prophets and all the messengers. We make no distinction between them. We believe in the revelation that was sent to them, the books that God has given them for the guidance. We believe in the angels that God has operated in this universe, the angels of death, the angels of revelation, the angels who are writing our deeds, because this is God who's operating in this universe in such a way people can have no excuse later on, because this is how they are. No one can see, but yes, of course, the angels are writing your deeds down, good and bad, you will see it. So we believe in the angels. We believe in the life after death, in which we will be resurrected and we will be accountable for our belief and our deeds, and we'll be judged. We believe in the good and bad that comes from God, because God is the one who has governed the outcome of everything, but He's also given us some free will, okay, in which we can operate. So all of these are the articles of faith, the pillars of Islam. If you accept and believe in them, You are a Muslim. So all it's required from you is to make that declaration that yes, I do testify. Are you ready? Bismillah. First, I will tell you in English, as I mentioned again. Basically, you will say, I bear witness and testify. English first, so that you know what I'm saying in Arabic. I bear witness and testify.
I bear witness and testify.
That there is no God worthy of worship.
That there is no God worthy of worship.
Except Allah.
Except Allah.
The one and only.
The one and only.
Without any partners.
Without any partners.
And I bear witness and testify.
And I bear witness and testify.
That Muhammad is Allah's servant and His messenger.
Is Allah's servant and His messenger.
Ashhadu.
Ashhadu.
An. لا إله إلا الله وأشهد وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. الله أكبر. Welcome to Islam, my brother. Welcome to Islam. Welcome to Islam. MashaAllah. Show some love to my brother. Welcome to Islam.
Bro, you see this one? I'm feeling it for a long time. Very long time.
الله ينفع بك ويرفع قدرك ما شاء الله. جزاك الله خير يا شيخ. معاذ from Mecca from Saudi Arabia. Pleasure to see you.
Inform him that he is in the full brotherhood. So
Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. To Allah belongs all the praise and gratitude. So you need to be thankful to Allah that He's removed that obstacle which was preventing you from a long time. You already knew in your heart. Did you not? But it's just obstacle that was remaining. So now, inshallah, there's a lot of things for you. I would suggest you, when you go home, take a shower and stand in front of Allah in your own language and thank Allah sincerely. Be in company of the Muslims, good Muslims. I'm sure your friends are very good. That's why they brought you here. And start learning Islam from people, from teachers, not from just a YouTube lecture and a debate. Learn, sit down with the scholars, okay? The first and foremost thing is to learn how to pray, because this is the connection that you're going to have with God. Initially, you would not know what to say and so on, but the brothers will teach you how to even say Alhamdulillah or Subhanallah. Yeah, Allahu Akbar. With these, you're going to start learning your prayer, and you're going to start learning gradually how to say the words in prayer. This is a prayer mat, a gift from the brothers has given you. The prayer mat, it's a prayer mat. When you stand, you can read, it tells you exactly the different sequence and what to say in English transliteration, okay? There's a copy of the Qur'an in English and of course some other literature. So, brother, you have to really make that effort now to learn and to show, because you know now all your previous sins are forgiven. You have a clean slate. Anything that you have done earlier, so God has changed your bad deeds into good deeds. So you already have something even more, right? Already your bad deeds are converted into good deeds. So sins are forgiven means you're like a newborn baby. So this is a time to really, all your bad habits that you had, start gradually removing them. If it's so difficult, gradually. If it's not difficult, immediately. And start learning and practicing. If you do not be in the company of the Muslims, you will be, because look, shaitan is real. Shaitan will try to say, look, I have a bigger job to try to, whisper and all these things. So you need to be strong. You need to start learning. If you have families, there might be stop from the families as well. So a lot of learning to do and becoming strong. Only way you can become strong is to have that iman, the faith, stronger. But how you do that? By connecting to your Lord, your Allah. And how are you going to connect? By having regular prayers, establishing the prayers. It's very important. If you can establish that, inshallah, you'll realize it becomes easy. Make it into a habit of visiting a mosque nearby. If it's not nearby, at least go there as much as possible there and be in the vicinity area in which Allah is worshipped with all heart and sincerity. You will see the connection. And as more and more you realize, if you have financial means and so on, then of course you will go to Hajj and you will see this. But important for you now is to take those baby steps. And I expect my brother, inshallah, and see you in weeks or months or years' times, to learn from you. So that you have learned, so that not only you're practicing, but you're also imparting Islam to other people, if you are able to. Because you have gone through the experience of this transformation. You can help others who are still within this particular experience, and you can help them to come out of it. That's why one of the good things is when people revert to Islam, they can really affect other people like-minded them. Okay? It's an opportunity, don't waste it. It's not an obligatory on you, it's an obligatory when you're able to. In Islam, you are only able to do some things, then it becomes the role for you to play. Otherwise, God doesn't oblige you to do some things when you are not able to do so. Okay? Does that make sense, brother? So don't waste too much time here. I would really recommend go home, wherever you are, take a shower, and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take, because you know him from school, right? Mosque nearby?
Near him, actually,
I'm still close to number.
oh yeah, we need to
Nearby?
go to Mamos.
Right. Can you really connect him with some alims, some tullab al-ilm, inshallah, who can really mentor him and show him gradually and teach him? Because I don't want the brother to learn himself by reading from an internet. Someone take the opportunity. If you want, you can. I can take your number, inshallah, and I can connect with some, I know, a group, a young brothers group they've created also with mentoring. So let me just be off camera, and then I'll take your number, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر لكم. I just want to remind everyone, don't give up. Don't give up conveying Islam through your words and your actions. You've just witnessed it yourself. Don't give up, because there is still hope. Because people who are sincere, Allah will guide them. So take this as a lesson, inshallah. Doesn't matter who the outmost, in physical experience that they're the worst. Allah can change their, external behavior and bring them back to Islam. So may Allah guide us all closer and closer to truth. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر لكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Take this one, if you don't mind, it is for brother. No, take only one.
Yes,